All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday again. Oh my gosh. I have big news. So Susan Wolf and I wrote a book several years ago, and we had a contract with Oxford Press through the Division 27 of APA. And halfway through the process, our editors were switched on us, and we just weren't happy with the direction of the book. They wanted it to be very academic. They wanted a textbook. Um, and we just weren't really excited about that. We wanted something that was much more accessible, like you were sitting down with a friend or someone to give you just really good advice. So we got ourselves out of that contract, and the book has been languishing for at least 2 years. It's pretty much, it is written in its current form. So Susan got pinged by an editor at Cambridge Press a few weeks ago saying, "Hey, I found your community psych text. Do you have anything else like this?" And she said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do." So we've been talking to the editor for about 6 weeks now, and we just got a new contract sent to us. So yes, pretty excited about that because we've spent a lot of time writing that book. So we're really excited that we had to send it out for reviews, a few chapters in our outline, and we got really great feedback about how to kind of consolidate it, make it tighter. So I think it's gonna be great. So yeah, that's my big news.
Congratulations. It's really exciting.
Thank you. Anybody else have any big news they want to share?
Awesome.
Anybody have any little news they want to share?
Well, I can say I dabbled in recruiting for the past 4 months, and I had 2 successful placements. So I'm really happy about that, but I don't plan to be a full-time nonprofit recruiter.
Were you thinking about expanding your business that way?
Yeah, nonprofit consulting in general with a focus on communications, but I love the concept of human resources and people power, and I like connecting people with their passions, and so that was something I wanted to take a stab at. So it's nice to have a little bit more experience under my wing, but I think it proves it's not a full-time direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's fabulous that you tried something and thought, yeah, that's not really kind of not where I want to go.
But I enjoyed it. I mean, it's just not, like part of, I think, my vision as I'm crafting the vision.
Yeah, that's great. The IC chat yesterday, I think, Teddy, I don't know if you were there, but Megan and Jessica were there. And there were a lot of good resources. I think Susan did it yesterday, and she was talking about our skill sets and how we can leverage it for different things. And that kind of reminds me of that conversation yesterday. But lots of people had a lot of great resources that they shared in the chat and just talked about the different things that they had tried. Like I know, facilitation skills was a big topic of the conversation, that as evaluators, we're called to be facilitators a lot of times, sometimes more than, crunching numbers and doing kind of traditional evaluation activities. So anybody else have big or little news they want to share? All right. And Jenna, I think you're new to the group. Did you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. I think I've seen a couple of you. I've met Megan. We met one-on-one a week or two ago, so that was fun. Yeah, I'm new to it. I just, I don't know how much background to give, but came up as an applied researcher and did some evaluation. I was at Search Institute for about 6 years, which is a youth development applied research organization. And unfortunately, my position and a bunch of others got eliminated at the end of last year. And so I decided to give the independent consultant thing a shot. So I'm building it's called Informed Change, and it's sort of research, evaluation, facilitation. And I think youth development's kind of the niche, but I can imagine doing some things outside of that. So I thought I need to meet some people in this world because I think I'll be doing probably as much of evaluation as applied research, because I think that's probably, what is called for more often in working with smaller, independent consultants. So, so I'm just here to learn and start to meet new cool people like all of you.
Awesome. And Jenna, how did you find out about office hours?
Was it you, Megan, that told me? I can't remember.
I think I know we did definitely talk about it. Talked about the Hello Friday. We did definitely talk about it when we chatted. But I think it had been put out there at one of the ICTIG chats.
Yeah, that sounds right. I've been to a couple of them, maybe like 3 so far. And so yeah, then I think I kind of heard about it through the grapevine. So I don't even know what it is. It just sounded like fun people come to it and talk about cool things. So that's why I decided to show up.
That's basically how I sold it, Anne, was that like you had your years of wisdom and then the rest of us just show up to like chat and find out new things and see what's going on and get problems solved, hopefully, and just meet other people who are trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And truth be told, I always learn from you guys too. It's definitely a give and a get situation for sure. But Jenna, I don't know, this was an idea I had like in March of 2020 as I sat on my back deck. That I don't know if you guys can see out my like window there. It's really pretty. And we back up to this 40-acre horse farm. And so I sat out there and communed. And that was one of the things like, I think I kind of want to give back. So that's what this is all about. And we just like share and hopefully have a little bit more one-on-one time than you can get in the IC chat, which is always topic driven. And there's a great discussion, but I want this to be for folks who are starting their business and what are your pain points and where are you stuck and how can we kind of brainstorm together to figure out how to get you like unstuck. And I'm still learning. I mean, this last couple of weeks, I've learned a few things like, well, damn, I wish I'd known that 20 years ago. So anyway, why don't you guys do a brief introduction? And I do have a topic for today and also a tip sheet from Susan that I want to share with you guys. So Abby, since you've already chatted a little bit, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll go that way. So Megan, you're next, and then Jen, and then Jessica.
Sure. Hey guys. So I'm Abby Gross. I live in Atlanta. I've been doing nonprofit work for the past almost 20 years. I specialize in communications and fundraising. And I recently took the leap into a consulting part-time as I am going to grad school for a specialization in public interest communications, which is a burgeoning field, new program through the University of Florida. So that's me. I'm venturing back into academia and I'm loving it. I'm the biggest dork with the content. I guess that means I'm in the right program, but that's me, and I'll share my LinkedIn in the chat.
Awesome. All right, Megan. It sounds like you guys know each other. So now you got to tell me, did you meet in the IC chat? How did that come about?
Yeah, so Jenna and I connected in the IC chat, and we connected on LinkedIn. She sent me a connection request thingy, and then as you can see, I'm just very up on the lingo of the social medias these days. And then we had a one-on-one coffee Zoom and found out that we've got, some overlap in terms of what we're interested in. And she actually put me in touch with someone who's close to where I live here in Indianapolis. So yeah, it was a great connection to make. So I told her she should jump in on here. But I'll briefly, I'm a recovering academic and just starting to dig into the consulting stuff. And I do have to apologize in advance. I may have to jump off here abruptly because we're getting a new bed today. And it's one of the fancy ones that requires someone to come in and actually set it up. So that's a 2-person job. One person has to direct them and one person has to occupy the dog. So I may be leaving slightly early.
Okay, gotcha. And Jenna, where did you say you were based out of?
I'm out of the Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right, Jen, you're next.
Hi, I'm Jen. So my focus is on public health as well as healthcare. I spent the last like 10 years working in government, nonprofits, corporate healthcare, and also doing public speaking on the side. And then I just kind of got this itch to do something different. And so I started doing consulting back in November. So I'm a good 6 months in. I'm actually just finishing up one contract now. I sent out another contract today to get signed.
Yeah.
So things are going good. And one of the things I'm learning, and maybe Anne, we can talk about this in a future conversation, is like coming from like, a work environment where you have like marketing and all that kind of stuff. We're in vacation season right now, and I'm so used to just putting in PTO and being like, I've got these 2 weeks protected. And I just went on vacation for like a week and a half, and it seems like everything kind of blew up while I was gone, and figuring out that like there's nobody covering my work while I'm gone. And how do you navigate that as a consultant when you're by yourself? So if you have any tips for that, I would love to know them.
Okay. Awesome. Gotcha. All right, Jessica, I think you are next.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Jessica Metcalf. Like Megan, I am also a recovering academic. So I officially left my full-time academic job in December. And I started my LLC this January. But I have been kind of marinating on becoming an independent consultant for several years now. I've been doing projects kind of on the side while I was doing my PhD and my postdoc. So I've been doing small projects on the side for a good number of years, and just decided to take the leap. I'm located in Southern Vermont, so we recently moved here from Illinois, which was definitely part of my process in making this transition. I'd been targeting remote work and evaluation work for a while, and I realized that the best fit for me was really to go out on my own. So that has been really great, and I do still have kind of 1 foot or half a foot in my old job. So I do some work as a independent contractor for my old lab at the University of Illinois. And most of my work is focused on public health programming. I specialized in nutrition related stuff back at the university, and just programming with youth, families, community development, things like that.
All right, very good. And last but not least, Teddy.
Hi, so I'm Theodore Harris. Everybody calls me Teddy. Anyone who's on the call already knows that. I do food systems and sort of that intersection of evaluation, food systems, health, and recently youth and education. All sort of probably best described under, let's say, Blue Marble Evaluation Prism. And I'm in Brooklyn, New York City.
All right, awesome. Okay, all right. So we have introductions. Hopefully you guys are connecting on LinkedIn, and I think I'm connected with everybody on LinkedIn. I did have a topic for today, and before I do that, I shared in the chat just to remind you that we do have a shared drive and a YouTube channel. I did not record Susan's session last time because when she started to show her screen, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't want her to feel like she's obligated to show us her personal things. And then she didn't. So I was really regretting it, that I hadn't recorded it. And I asked her like, hey, would you do a tip sheet for my people since we didn't record? And she did. So I have saved that as a PDF. And before I did, I don't know, some of you remember, I sent you some links about how do you calculate your paycheck. And then I added like the IRS link so you would know how to pay where to go to pay your taxes. So I added those to Susan's tip sheet, and I've uploaded it to our Google shared drive. So even though we don't have the recording, you've got a tip sheet for you. So hopefully that will help you in a couple of months when you go, oh my gosh, I had to pay my quarterly taxes. And it has the dates, Megan, so you'll know. exactly when you need to pay your taxes. All right, so
Now, just by the by, that the IRS tends to not fine you for the quarterly taxes. So that from people I know who do it, they haven't gotten fines. So fingers crossed, I haven't completely screwed myself over.
exactly. Well, what's the worst thing that can happen? That you have to pay the fine. All right, so we're going to talk about something very sexy and romantic today. We're going to talk about the first date, and I mean with a client. And this was on my mind because I actually had a first date. First dates are so exciting, right? With a potential client last week. So this was on my mind. I really haven't, truth be told, practiced my slides. So we're just going to see how this goes. So this is totally top of mind, and then we're going to have a conversation. So how many of you believe in love at first sight? You can come off mute and tell me.
Absolutely not.
Agree. Absolutely not.
Oh, that sounds like there's like history or a story there somewhere. Well, how many of you feel like you get a sense from people like right off the bat whether or not you guys are going to click? Maybe not love, but does your intuition kick in?
Sure, I would say so. You can get a read on people pretty quick.
Jen and Jessica, what about you? Because you didn't believe in love at first sight, I don't think.
So yes and no, because I do think like we all put on like our best selves. And so I sometimes wonder if that's the authentic person. Maybe I'm just a skeptic through and through. But yeah, I do usually get like a general sense, but sometimes I'm wrong.
Awesome. Well, and all of a sudden, not to call you guys, animals or dogs, but it does remind me of my office mate today. You guys know that I work from home on Fridays, so my office mate is at my feet, and everybody always assumes because Sadie's like a really cute dog that it's okay for them to introduce their dogs. Not true. Because Sadie is a nervous Nelly, and she'll like sort of kind of wag her tail, but she looks cross-eyed at him, and within 30 seconds, she's kind of like, growling at them. So side tangent, dogs seem to have this thing, right? They size each other pretty well and decide whether or not they like each other. I find that I have pretty good intuition, and I can pretty much tell off the bat whether or not I'm going to like click with this person. So maybe that just means I'm an idealist, and I'm not as skeptical as some people on the call. So let's talk about that first date and what should you talk about? Because I've been married like a skinny minute now, and by skinny minute, I mean 37 years. So it's been a long time since I've had a first date and had that awkward situation where what you should talk about. So I would say even before you start talking, you want to make a connection somehow. You want to find something that you have in common. Maybe this is my Southern upbringing. And I did a vlog years ago, and I was trying to find it for you guys about what evaluators could learn from Southerners. Because in the South, you would never talk about business before you made some kind of personal connection, whether that be a common interest or a hobby, or you both have kids, or maybe you both don't have kids, or something. You would want to make that connection. Now, back in the day when you could walk into somebody's office or they could walk into your office, that it was a lot easier. There were like pictures or there were signs, but I find making that connection, finding that common interest is really, really important to setting off that first date. And then here's another pro tip I would give you is listen more than you talk. I think so many people tend to like just hop right in with the big sales pitch. Let me tell you all about me. Let me tell you all about my company. And I just don't find that feels very, that holds a lot of integrity for me. That feels very salesy. And yeah, I don't see myself as a salesperson, although we all are if we have our own business. I mean, truth be told, we are trying to sell our services, but I don't like it kind of in my face. So I try to always remember to listen more than I talk. And maybe this is where my clinical training, because most of you know I started out as a clinician. Maybe that's where that just really helps to really look somebody in the eye, to really use that good reflective listening and to try to really understand. And what you're trying to understand is what are their pain points? Why are they talking to you in the first place? And so in this conversation that I have with the nonprofit that I was talking to last week, I wanted to know what is giving them heartburn, what's keeping them up at night. Why are they even talking to me in the first place? Is it external pressure from a funder? Is it internal pressure? There's something going on organizationally. So some of you who were on the IC chat yesterday probably heard me say that I think evaluation is almost always an organizational intervention. So really kind of listen to their pain points. Is it trying to figure out how to get started in evaluation or data collection, or are they drowning in data and they have no clue what to do with it? Are they really struggling with communicating their information? So try to get an idea of what their pain points are, and then whether or not that pressure to evaluate is coming internally and or externally, or both, as in this case. And then think about the 5 whys. Now, some of you guys know this from root cause analysis, if you've had any of that training. But I heard Daniel Pink on a masterclass. He has a masterclass out right now. And this was one of his tips. And it's really funny because my business coach had just was coaching me on this as well. And I really hadn't ever thought about that in terms of a conversation with clients. So it's definitely something I'm trying out. So if they say, well, I really need an evaluator, well, why? I don't like that word, like why, in your face. So it would probably be more my style to say, well, tell me more about that. Well, because, our funder just really isn't happy with us. Well, why? Well, they don't feel like we're really showing that we're really being a good steward of their money. Well, why is that? Well, we haven't really been able to collect our data in a way that is not burdensome. Okay, do you see where I'm going? So now you're getting to kind of that root cause of their pain point, and you can do something with that. The other thing I always keep in mind on the first date is you kind of want to understand how many other dates they've been on. And by this, I mean, not only how many other evaluators are they interviewing or consultants, but have they worked with an evaluator before? And if they did, what was that experience like? I don't know about where you guys are, but where I am, we have a lot of evaluators in the Atlanta area. That's very true. Not so much in rural Georgia. But I think whether it be rural Georgia or somewhere across the country, there are a lot of bad evaluation. There's a lot of bad evaluation going on. There are a lot of people who are calling themselves evaluators and leaving kind of a trail of, just a trail behind them, but people who are just not satisfied. So I want to know whether or not they've been to the dentist lately, and was that a good experience or not? And then I'm also trying to gauge their internal capacity for evaluation. I'm in the back of my mind, I'm wanting to know, is this strategy, is this project they have, is it really valuable? I may not do an evaluability assessment. That's not often in my deck of cards because the budget sometimes doesn't really allow for that. But I always have those kinds of things in mind, like how stable is the program. But I also want to know what is their internal capacity to participate and interest, actually. So is there somebody on, if it's a nonprofit, for example, is that is there a person who is responsible for collecting data and reporting back to funders, for example? What kind of experience do they have with Excel? Do they have is there a customer relation management system in place or some kind of MIS system, or are they using paper, pencil, and ticky mark? So I also want to know what's their software capability, what's their hardware capability, like how really kind of stretched are they, so that I know how to gauge the support that I'm going to offer them. So once you've done that, you've done your listening, you've listened to the pain points. Of course, you made that connection first, right off the bat. Only then, I think, is it your turn to really start talking. And you want to tell them kind of who you are, right? So I might mention that, I'm a mom of 3 boys. This is especially useful if I'm doing substance abuse prevention or youth development programs. Like, I've been there. I kind of feel you. I want to know, you want to know that you want to express to them rather that you're a human being, that you have interests. So I love to travel. I have 2 grandkids. I am always baking. Some of you who are signed up for my weekly emails are always seeing metaphors that might have to do with cake or bread or both. I also want to talk about that I'm really active in the American Evaluation Associations, that we have standards and ethics that we follow, that I keep on my professional development. You want them to know that you are a human, and that gets back to just connecting with them in some way. And then you want to talk about your values and your approach. I think talking about your values and your principles is really important. And then as well as the approach that you're going to take, especially if they are interviewing several different consultants and they're hearing things like utilization-focused evaluation or participatory evaluation or empowerment evaluation or whatever it is that you have in your toolbox. Don't just throw out those words. Really explain to them and tell them stories about how you have helped like organizations using your approach, and that it's been very successful, that you have a track record for your approach. And if you have a framework, that's a great place to explain your framework. And then so this is a picture of me and my friend Ted. And I actually like this because I find that I don't smile enough, especially in videos or pictures. So I picked this one and I thought about it because for a couple of reasons. One, I don't know what the heck we were laughing at, but I think it is important to be likable. My email theme this week was an incident that happened when I went home last week for a funeral. Somebody had said something kind of very, very proudly about a mean meme they had shared on Facebook, and they got blocked on Facebook. So my email this week was about that. And it really has me thinking about how mean we are. I plan on doing a Facebook Live this afternoon if you're around, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. I do think we live in a world where everybody is ready to fight. And I do think if you are a consultant and you're out working with community members, you're working with nonprofits, you got to be likable, right? A lot of people are very afraid about evaluators. They feel like they're going to be judged. That you might recommend a program be eliminated. All of those kinds of fears. So it's really important, I think, to be likable. And this all has to do with relatability. And so I am forever reminding myself, and then a child who is sleeping upstairs, so he won't hear this, to just slap a smile on your face, right? So will there be a second date? Hopefully there will be a second date. You don't really always know whether or not there will be. You can't always tell. Sometimes you think that things are going really well, and you don't hear from the person again. You might follow up and nothing happens. And sometimes the second, it may be a long time between the first and the second date, a long time. So you have to really think about that. I apologize. Somebody's got a alarm on. So And by that, so I'll give you an example. So I'm working on the implementation of a strategic plan for a nonprofit, and I have known that organization at least 7 or 8 years. They were partners on a project that I evaluated several years ago, but I always wanted to work with them. I always knew I wanted to work with them. I didn't do a hard sales pitch. I just stayed connected. They're on my email list. If I saw an article, you guys have heard me talk about this before. If I saw something they would be interested in, I would send it their way. Never a hard sales pitch. And they contacted me probably about 2 months ago to help them with implementing their strategic plan. So sometimes you got to wait for that second date. But if it's an organization you really, really want to work with, it's definitely worth the wait. And I don't even mean financially, because this is not even a big project, but this organization means so much to me. I was really excited to get that. All right, the dirty word, E. I don't typically talk about money on a first date if it's one of those, we're just getting to know each other. If it is more formal, like we are really serious about this and we have a grant, that kind of thing, I may go ahead and say, do you have a budget in mind for this project? They're not going to want to tell you, because they're always afraid that consultants are going to go to that highest level of whatever they throw on the table. I think for the most part, that's not untrue. But I think I quoted this to you guys before. E. Jane Davidson, or at least I attribute this to her, always talks about that you have to know whether or not you're building a moped or a Harley. You kind of got to know what the parameters are of the work. So in honor of Matt Feldman, here's my 5.5 tips. So make a connection, listen more and talk less, listen for their pain points. That's really going to help you write your proposal. And they're going to feel heard when you do write your proposal. And you want to gauge their capacity and know their history. This is going to have a lot of impact on the work you do, as well as the time it's going to take to do the work. And make sure you share your values and approach. And 5.5 tip, of course, is be likable. So that is the formal part of the presentation. So just want to see how that resonates with you, whether or not those are some strategies you guys use. And I'm sure there's other things that I did not use, but that's kind of my approach. Do you have an approach? Let's start there. Do you have an approach? And if not, do you need one?
Yesterday, I had a call with a chief development officer, and I didn't know whether or not it was a first date. So I'd never talked with her before. We were connected through a mutual colleague, and it was just interesting because I thought it was going to be a 20-minute call. It ended up being a 50-minute call. About 3/4 of the way into it, I, asked her, would you be looking for consulting services? And she very quickly said, oh, no money in the budget for that. So it was interesting because I proceeded to, we went on, it was a 50-minute call instead of what I thought was going to be 20, 30. And I guess one thing that it just reminds me of is kind of like the long game in relationship building, just like in fundraising. So, right. I mean, now that I'm connected with her, she said she wanted to stay in touch and she appreciated a lot of my points. I pretty much gave her several tips in pro bono. But I guess there's also a point at which you need to say that your services are for a fee versus just take informational calls that are going to gobble. Because then I also spent 10 or 15 doing a follow-up email to help her with resources. So, so it was an hour all in pro bono, which I'm passionate about the cause she works for. The organization she works for is wonderful. And it's just, I guess, something to say, but also to say at what point, do you, transition the relationship building to a more solid, I really need to be paid for my services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody want to tackle that with Abby? I really have not had a situation where I felt like people were taking advantage of me. Nobody likes to hear that phrase. I've heard, so I've seen several people blogging on it recently about, can I just pick your brain? Right. Nobody likes to hear that, but I really haven't had a situation where I felt like people kept going back to the well, and that's a new relationship. So, you just kind of have to think about that. Has anybody been in that situation yet where they felt like somebody was kind of like asking for a lot of free advice? No? You may, as you go on. And something to think about, and I've seen a lot of people do this with their websites, maybe you guys do, because it's been a while since I've looked at everybody's website, is book a call. I've seen it be 15 minutes. I don't know how you do a call in 15 minutes. That's just me. And I'm an introvert and I'm gabbier than that. Or book 30 minutes, and that's just kind of their first entryway into a conversation. I think I just have like, let's connect kind of thing. I don't have that, because I truthfully at this point don't really have time for half-hour calls that may or may not like go anywhere. But you guys are getting started. That may be a great strategy for you, is to have that on your website, book a call. But yeah, I think
one thing, now that I've sat through this session, I would have focused more on asking her questions about her pain points so that I could have followed up more specifically, rather than just answer the questions she had yesterday.
Yeah. Other things that this brings up. Yeah, I was a teacher. I can like be quiet all day long. It just makes for very awkward viewing.
I was going to follow up on what Abby said, and something a professor of mine at Claremont and Gwen Garrison, always be mindful of your reputation, because it is, even in New York City, which is a very large city, it's amazing how small the world really is. And to your point, Anne, about that clicking with somebody, it's amazing, especially because of COVID, how many video calls we've been on, how many we've been able to share perhaps more of our passion than we normally could have in a professional setting, or relating to like personal things. Oh, you have cats, I have dogs, things like that. And as the economy begins to sort of awaken or come into a spring, it's amazing when people know your passion, how you can resonate, and they'll call you back. But taking your time to do things right versus quickly, or if you are going to do stuff quickly, be honest about it and say, okay, this is what the money costs, this is what I can do in a quick 48-hour turnaround, which is New York minute, right? It happens. But just that honesty, it's amazing how people will remember you, even in fleeting aspects. And I think that's just, it's amazing. And just, if it won't mind your reputation, don't know anything bad, it's always going to come back to haunt you if you did down the road.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it sounds like you're really talking about setting expectations. Like if somebody's asking you for some advice, you can say, hey, this, completely just really quick, obviously I would, if we had a formal relationship, I would spend more time, but just, this is my first, pass at my first thoughts. I think that's really, really good. Another thing you can think about is how much time do you want to give pro bono? I mean, you can make that decision. I'm going to carve off X amount of hours to do pro bono work. I mean, I sit on the board of a nonprofit. All of that to me is pro bono work, because I'm on the board specifically for my evaluation expertise. So that's, you can make that decision and then you don't feel like taken advantage of. So I want to hear you guys talk more about the first date because you're all new, you're all getting started. Do you have in mind a process, or you still feel like you're working it out? And I don't have, by the way, it's not formal. I don't have like point one, do this, right? It's not like that, but I have an approach in mind. Go ahead, Teddy.
I was going to say one of the things I have a hard, and this is just in the last few months, I've come to this realization. You might think you have a date with somebody who's the decision maker, but in reality, your date is not with them. It is with an admin. It is with an office manager. It is with somebody else. And you might not even, your first interaction may not be that 30-minute Zoom call. It might just be your back and forth emailing to set up for her boss. And in reality, she is your gatekeeper.
Yep.
And it's not only the person who's going to pay you and figure out how to pay you, but it's the person who needs to understand your data dictionary, needs to know how the two of you will click and your systems will click. So I would be worried that again, you might be getting all ready for this great date and having, and pre-mental prepare. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to do this twitching thing I do normally and have your mental notes. But in reality, that 30-minute call is useless because a decision has already been made in terms of an up and down vote, and it's been made in your absence of your input in a way.
You know, what that reminds me of is the is the adage, is that the word? Always be nice to the church and school secretary. Because they're a lot of times is, that gatekeeper. Yeah, so I guess Jessica had to go and get her, Megan rather had to go and take care of her bed. Jessica, what about you? Do you have your first date routine yet?
I would say that maybe my routine isn't quite as methodical as yours, but I try to hit on, some similar points. And I think that the way that you kind of emphasize the pain points is really helpful. Thinking about, maybe you don't ask them directly, like, why are we having a conversation? But there's a reason that they, felt like it was necessary to talk to you, and really trying to understand, what their needs are. And I feel like maybe what I need to continue to work on is just making those conversations kind of as organic and natural as possible, and striking that balance between building rapport and getting to know each other, but making sure you still, get some of those important answers out of the conversation of, what can I do for you? What can I help with? It's definitely really helpful to think about. And like Megan, I might have to pop out in a minute or two. I'm running a focus group in 15 minutes here, so I'll probably pop out a little early.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so, we're not selling door-to-door vacuum cleaners, right? So we're not going in, back in the day where they go in and throw dirt on your floor. Was that a thing, or was that just on TV? I don't know. But we're not doing that. But there is a whole world called marketing and sales that evaluators don't know anything about. But there are people to follow, like podcasts and blogs and things like that you can glean from. I would just caution you to take the advice you hear and then make it your own, right? Don't turn into that sleazy salesperson, because I don't think most of the people that we work with that's not going to resonate with them. I don't think that's my opinion. I could be wrong. All right. What about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, the 5 points, they do resonate. It's funny because when I got let go within the last year, like as a qualitative researcher, I'm like, I'm just gonna do a research study on what people like and don't like about their jobs so I can figure out where I want to work next. That really was kind of the point. I was like, I had no idea if I wanted to be a consultant. I wasn't even I didn't even know the vocabulary that so many people actually did it. It was not even on my radar. but I knew a lot of people through my connections with Search, being there 6 years, to say, I think I'll go to some of the people I used to do projects with, or I
Mhm.
teach at the University of Minnesota. I have for the last 8 years. I teach the sort of 101 to the youth studies program.
Mhm.
So I've had a lot of students come through, know a lot of different faculty. So I'm like, I'm just going to talk to all these people. And some of the same questions were like, what is meaningful about your job right now? What gets in the way of what you want to do? What would it take to actually change the things that you think need to change in your job to make it exactly what you wanted? And I definitely figured out I never want to work for the state, because I talked to 3 people in Minnesota Department of Education and Minnesota Department of Health. I'm like, so that sounds like a nightmare, but it was really nice to meet you. You know, so it sort of started to whittle down, okay, these would not be a
Yeah.
jump that I would want to take. But as I talked to more and more different independent consultants, I'd talk to one, they'd say, oh, you should really talk to so-and-so. You know, they just started their own thing not long ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more I did, the more I was like, okay, I'm really seeing how I might be able to take sort of, you know, the theory, the stuff that I really cared about when I was in grad school, which was more equity focused, like decolonizing method, things like that, that I couldn't really use at Search, because that was more kind of straight up, more positivist youth development kind of stuff, where it was a little bit more of a deficit-based view of young people. But I can take all those skills from Search, that was like project management, you know, designing research studies, working with partners, like, oh, I could actually put all that stuff together and just do something new. So what I haven't done is go back to any of those same people and say, oh, based on all these conversations, I actually decided to do a thing, you know? And so maybe it's now taking some of those same questions, but thinking, especially, was it you, Jessica, was saying like the pain points, or like really thinking about, like really listening, because I mean, I love to listen as a qualitative researcher. That's just, you know, kind of the center of the gig right there in the first place. I love to hear people's stories, but probably listening much more deeply for kind of the subtle things they say about what they need or what's not working.
Yeah.
Now, what's the lens of like, what is possible for informed change to partner on, if at all, you know, if it makes sense. So
Yeah.
So that might be my next step, is kind of going back to this swath of people with a little bit more focus on the understanding the pain points, to see if there's actual
and
partnership opportunities. So
well, and more than partnership opportunities, trying to figure out what is it that I'm going to be selling in my consulting business to address whatever those pain points are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, it'll mostly, if we need to do a survey, we will. I'm not saying I'm never going to do it, but I already sort of said, like, the tagline is everyone has a story. Stories are data. Data informs change. So that's sort of that idea of like, you know, we want to come in and listen to people's experiences at all different levels of your organization if we really want to understand what you need, and then kind of support them from there. So
yeah, I like the name of your company. Jen, were you going to Jen, were you going to jump in a minute ago or not? Or do you have a first date process?
That might have been Abby, but I can go. I don't have like a formalized process. What's been kind of weird for me lately is a lot of the projects I've been kind of speaking to people about are brand new projects. So, you know, when you're talking about like pain points, they don't necessarily have them yet, unless if you consider the pain point to be, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just really
that would count.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful that they're bringing in somebody like us early, you know, in the process. They're like, oh, we want evaluation to be like even before implementation. I'm like, great, we're off to a good start. The other thing that's been kind of weird, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate it, is like kind of what Teddy said about like, okay, you're having these first conversations with the, you know, office manager or whatever, but then once I have that, a lot of times I get thrown into like a group conversation. So my first date is a group date. And I don't know how to navigate that.
That sounds so like hard. A terrible scene out of The Bachelor.
It was bad. Yeah, there we go. But it's hard because you also don't know who is holding the most weight at times.
Oh, it's funny you should say that, because I think it was that same, I'm pretty sure his name is Daniel Pink in that master class, because he did this thing. I forget the name of the movie, but he basically did a network analysis of this movie scene. And he just, and I can see you doing this. Like you could draw, like if it's a round table, you could put everybody's name around the table and you just kind of note who's talking to who's talking the most, who gets the last word, right? Who really kind of has the power in the relationship. Obviously, it's not something you can like, do like this. You got to be really subtle, but it does speak to a different level of listening that will tell you, if you're paying attention, who's really the decision maker, because that's who you need to talk to. So
I have a weird psychological question. Is the last word ego or power motivated? Like the true, like if you're like ending a meeting and you feel, and if this is beyond your, psychological stuff, just like, if you're
I have
ending a
3
meeting,
psychology degrees, so I'll just make it up.
right. So if you're ending a meeting and you feel like everything's been said that needs to be said, but then like someone's like, but da 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 da, and truly like the last word, not like the last word decision wise, but the last word of the meeting, is that like an ego thing or a power dynamic thing? Just depends.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the political answer. It depends. Maybe. I feel that way about emails too. When does an email chain have to end? All right, we got just a few minutes. Oh, Teddy, were you going to say something? I was going to ask you guys about where you're stuck.
No, I was going to say to Abby's point, who really has the last word? Because you assume the end of the meeting is the last word, but that might not be the case.
Mhm.
For instance, I would never ever contradict my boss in a meeting publicly, but but she will ask me for my criticism after the meeting has ended. And likewise, I know, for instance, my former boss, her husband might have the last word, or the way she feels the morning she's going to send that email. So I would also never presume to speak of what she has decided, and even after she has told me she's going to do A, until I see an official email saying she has decided to do A.
Mhm.
I think what threw me off with like my last one with the group was probably the person that was the most quiet is holding the most power. And so that can distract you or mislead you from who it is. And the way I figured it out was like, that was the person that eventually came on to the email communication and the office manager was like, well, let me get back with so-and-so. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I had a feeling in the group date, but like everybody else was dominating, build that relationship.
Yeah, and that just may be their leadership style, that they let their people, kind of like get to the nitty gritty of what all of the issues are, and they're standing back as kind of the decision maker. And that was in this in that masterclass I was telling you about. That was actually one of his points, is one of the people that was the most powerful actually didn't do a lot of the talking, but when decisions had to be made, people went to that person. So yeah, it's not always the talker.
Yeah, I think also what threw me off a little bit is because I like to be sensitive about, like dynamics in the room as far as like race, ethnicity, all your identities. And the program is very much going to focus on young girls, African American, and the most quiet person, the decision maker in the room, was the only African American person in the room. And she made a comment about that. And so like I felt a little uncomfortable being like, oh my gosh, I'm a white woman coming in, and I don't know, so it was hard to navigate that as far as like, is that her leadership style? Is it because of like the race dynamics, things like that? I don't know, things get sticky like real quick.
Right. Well, things are very sticky these days. So I try to acknowledge, I mean, this is who I am. So like, let's just put that out there, like right off the bat, if that is, if you're in that kind of group date situation, just, do those acknowledgements. Get that elephant acknowledged that is in the room anyway. Anybody have a place that they're stuck in? I would only have a few minutes. Anybody have okay, you asked about navigating vacation. Was that you, Jen? I didn't address that. I'm so sorry. So what I do, because I'm a small shop, so I'm not more than one person, but I always tell people ahead of time. I'm sure you did that. Let them know. I put an out of office reply, but I say, if it's an emergency, text me. I'll be checking emails periodically. I'm rarely not checking emails even on vacation, although I try not to. I may monitor them, but I'm not necessarily responding unless it's an emergency. I do have an office manager that they can reach out to, but if you're in a situation where you guys probably are, where you don't have a staff, you might ask a colleague to monitor, or if you have subcontractors, let them know that, hey, I need you to talk to, Teddy, because he's working with me on this project. So I'll be gone for 2 weeks, but be sure and reach out to Teddy if you need anything. So those are just top of mind things. Do you have a trusted colleague that knows a little bit about your business that can ferret any calls? And if not, I think the only choice is just to say, I'm on vacation. Unless, kind of like what I said to my kids when they were fighting, unless there is blood coming out of orifices or a bone protruding, please don't contact me. No, you wouldn't say that to your client, but you know what I mean. A true emergency. And then you work like a dog before and then after. I don't know if anybody else had any tips for Jen. I don't know if that helps at all, Jen.
It does. I did all those things like the out of office, monitoring emails. I think I'm just so used to having other colleagues that just step in for those quick little things that you have to come back, and it's a learning curve, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's just it's just you, so having good boundaries, there's nothing wrong with that. If they wanted a staff of thousands, they had other choices. So they're going to have to, give a little. Right. And if it's somebody that expects you to be 24/7, then I would really ask yourself if that's a relationship. Do you really want, do you want to continue on that marriage train, or is it time to maybe break up? Because you need to be working with people. And I say this as somebody who is answering emails at all hours. I'm really rethinking that whole thing of having better boundaries when it comes to okay, if I respond at 7 p.m., you know what I've just taught the client? That they can send me emails at all hours and then I'm going to respond. So I feel it's what my mother used to say to us, right? Do as I say, not as I do. Don't do that. Try to figure out what your boundaries are now while you're getting your company started. All right, so we're out of time. So if you did have a place you were stuck, shoot it to me in an email and I will address it next time. And we will be meeting on the 18th. So I hope this was helpful. As always, if you guys have particular topics that you want us to talk about, please shoot me an email and let me know. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.